Howdy, and welcome to the Texas Bucket List. My name is Shane McAuliffe, and when it comes to the history of Texas, Texans can proudly recite all the dates of 1836 and remember the Alamo or Goliad. But did you know a skirmish in South Texas had repercussions that molded the shape of the United States and Mexico? That's why the Palo Alto battle site is an incredible stop that makes the mark on the Texas Bucket List. The valley in South Texas is a tropical oasis that stretches down the Rio Grande River and forms the border between the United States and Mexico. Shortly after Texas entered the Union in 1845, this extremely unique part of our state instigated a war that shaped our country.
They end up kicking off something that's going to have monumental impacts.
Danny Ibarra is a park ranger at the Palo Alto battlefield, and he's been here much longer than the amount of time the Mexican-American War took place.
I just wrapped up 17 years.
You could have fought in 8.5 Mexican-American wars.
Pretty much.
The war lasted from April 1846 to February 1848, but it all started right here in this South Texas field that only takes up about 1 square mile.
This is the first official, actual battle of the U.S.-Mexican War.
Was that kind of the instigator when Texas came into the Union?
And it actually started a little bit before that, because when Texas was first approached by the U.S. to become part of the Union, Mexico was already saying, wait, hold on, you can't really do that because Texas is not an independent country. It's still part of our country.
So did they just not recognize 1836?
Yes and no. There's an acknowledgement there that Texas did engage in battles to win its independence. But according to the Mexican government, Texas has not won its independence. According to Mexico now, the Texans have a treaty that they force their leader to sign at gunpoint, which in their eyes kind of negates a peace treaty. It's like it wasn't signed voluntarily. And so they don't recognize the treaties of Alaska.
That treaty made the Rio Grande the official border of Texas. But Mexico was sort of letting that get lost in translation.
If we're going to even consider you being an independent country, you're not as big as you think you are. Your historical boundary has been the Nueces River. You're claiming the Rio Grande to be their southern boundary, and that is not the case. So we're not saying you're independent, but if we are going to say it, you're a lot smaller than what you think you are. Then you have President Polk, James K. Polk, wanting to purchase the huge states of California and New Mexico, Mexican states. But Mexico doesn't want to talk about selling these states until they settle the Texas issue. But President Polk is saying, there's no issue. It's ours. Let's move on to this sale. And the only way really for him to get what he wants is to send a U.S. force down to what he believes is the southern boundary of his new state, in essence kind of force the issue.
Can you imagine living in between the Nueces and the Rio Grande in those days? It's like, where do you live? I don't know.
See, that's the thing, yeah.
Could be Texas, could be Mexico.
General Zachary Taylor and his outnumbered troops arrived at the battlefield on May 8th. And if you've ever been down to the valley in May, it's like June or July anywhere else in the state.
It's May, you're in wool, and leading up to this battle and they camping out, there's this one quote by this one soldier: everything either bites, stings, or has a horn on it, or a thorn. It's like you're kind of just screwed.
Maybe that inspired them to fight fast. Lasting only 1 day, the Mexican forces fled to the river and were defeated the following day at the Battle of Resaca de la Palma.
The battle following the Resaca de la Palma, that's an outright defeat of the Mexican army. The lines literally break and they're running for the river, trying to get across to Matamoros. U.S. Army is in pursuit, and after that particular battle, that's the last time that the Mexican army officially comes north of the river to engage the U.S. Army or in any kind of official capacity. That 1 day is enough for the Mexican army to have nothing to do anymore with the U.S. artillery.
U.S. forces marched all the way to Mexico City, where they took over the capital.
They pulled the Mexican flag down, they raised the stars and stripes, and essentially at that point asked again, can we buy California and New Mexico? And so if you're the Mexican government, your army's broken, you've lost your capital.
Yeah. Yeah.
You say, okay, we'll negotiate now.
The rest, as they say, is history. Texas in the U.S. officially called the Rio Grande its southern border, and the country immensely expands.
For being a fairly short conflict, it definitely had very large and repercussions that you could say continue to this day. You have the U.S. double in size, and Mexico loses half of its national territory. You can almost start to look right at that particular moment where you can see the two countries go on pretty different paths down into their future development.
And it all started right here in this South Texas field.
So what is it about history? Why does it call to you? Why do you do this?
Really the stories, that's really what it is. Most of us go along every day thinking that, all right, I pretty much know what there is to know. But to realize that you really don't, and that there's hidden stories out there anywhere you look. If you look hard enough, that's what I'm hoping I can do.